The Sevastopol is finally being released. This ship will be available with the update 11.7, and you'll find it in the Research Bureau for 58,000 research points. It's a Tier 10 Russian cruiser, which may look a little bit German. Today, I'm going to review this ship and let you know if I think it's worth picking up. If by the end of this video you found it useful, I would really appreciate it if you'd subscribe to the channel and maybe even like the video. It really helps get these videos out to more people, and it's a great way to support the channel completely for free. Now on to the ship. What makes this thing special is its consumable layout. This is a Russian cruiser that does not have a radar. It's a Russian cruiser with the Battleship fast-acting damage controls. It has 4 charges of damage control and a 30-second cooldown, meaning you're always going to be able to damage con those fires if you're getting yourself in trouble. No fire prevention, of course, on cruisers, so being a big cruiser, it's very nice to have that extra damage control. The heal, of course, is the major gimmick here. It's a ton of fun, and I'll talk a little bit more about some of the downsides and how I think you should be using it later on. But for now, it's a 90-second heal duration, allowing for 45% of your health to be healed back on one charge. Of course, the downside to that is the reload time. This heal is not going to be available again for 3 minutes, which is an incredibly long time to go without a heal. And I think this is where you're going to either love or hate this ship, is this difficult heal to manage. It's extremely powerful, but if you're not great at heal management or positioning your ship, well, this is going to be a very, very challenging cruiser to play. Continuing with the consumables, we have a speed boost on this ship, and it's a very, very powerful one. 20% engine boost for 45 seconds. Not a long duration, but that's a large amount of engine power to be gained for that period of time. And best of all, it has a 60-second cooldown, so your heal may have an incredibly long duration and long cooldown. It's the exact opposite here with the speed boost. Short duration speed boost and short duration cooldown, which means it's always going to be available when you need it. And the last consumable we get is either a standard 5-kilometer hydro or defensive fire. I would definitely recommend using hydro since AA is not the most useful way of speccing your ship anymore. And the final part that sets this ship apart is the guns. I'm sure some of you have noticed they look a little like German 380mm guns, and that's because they are. They're a little bit different, but this definitely brings up the comparison to the Siegfried. That ship is also a battle cruiser, except that one's at tier 9. This one's at tier 10, and they share similar style of guns. To start off with, the dispersion is really good on the Sevastopol. It's a decent battle cruiser formula with reasonably tight accuracy. Of course, it's 6 guns, so we have that downside, but if we add in the Siegfried to take a look at here, we notice that, well, the Siegfried is a little bit more accurate, even though it is a tier lower. Although, let's bring in something like the Stalingrad, another tier 10 Russian battlecruiser, and we can see that the Sevastopol sits somewhere in the middle. We don't have the volume of fire like a Stalingrad, and our Sigma is much worse. That's something that carries the accuracy for the Stalingrad, certainly. But this is by no means an inaccurate ship. You'll notice in the gameplay footage that it's a very, very consistent ship, at least as far as 6-gun ships go. And this isn't the only difference between the Sevastopol and the Siegfried. The AP pen is significantly better on the Sevastopol, giving you more consistent damage against heavily armored targets at range. On top of that, the shell flight time is a little bit better as well, making it easier to aim at longer distances. And even though the reload is only slightly better by 1 second compared to the Siegfried, I think the Sevastopol is a much better ship thanks to its consumables and just the ship being very low in the water. I'm sure you've noticed this here. The Siegfried is very high out of the water, making it very easy to hit, even though it has some slightly better armor in places. We'll go over that later on the Sevastopol, but the small silhouette that this ship has, combined with its extremely good concealment, makes this ship much better than the Siegfried and worthy of being tier 10, while the Siegfried is tier 9. Now taking a look at the armor, we can see that the bow and stern are only 25 millimeters, meaning it's going to get overmatched by all the battleships, and even though it's a big weakness, it's quite small, as you can see, and as we move further back or into the middle of the ship, the upper belt is a full 30 millimeters along with the deck armor. This is not great into a lot of tier 10 and super battleships, but against lower tier battleships, this is amazing armor. And I really never felt like this 30mm plating was holding me back in my games. Sure, it's going to get overmatched and I'm going to take some damage, but combined with the amazing healing on this ship, and that it's a relatively small target to hit, means that it didn't affect my games too often. The Citadel and the lower belt are protected by 230mm of armor, which is good enough to prevent cruisers from easily citadeling you at mid-ranges. And I should mention that there is some spaced armor in the center portion of the Citadel here, where we have 90mm behind that 230mm plating, meaning there's going to be some black hole shells that get lost in this area, potentially, much like some French ships. And realistically, this is going to add a little bit to your protection, but not a ton. The main thing here to notice is the Citadel is exactly waterline, making it pretty hard to hit. Comparing to other tier 10 cruisers then, this ship really excels in its main guns. We see that its AP shell damage is far and away the best out of tier 10 cruisers. It also has the best AP pen. On top of that, this ship is middle of the road when it comes to concealment, which is insane considering the firepower that the Sevastopol has. And that's how you're going to get the best results out of this ship, combining its amazing concealment with extremely powerful guns, punishing broadsides at close to mid-ranges. On top of that, this ship has really good health, and of course, yeah, we can see that heal really bumps up the potential health that this ship has way higher than any other tier 10. It's very difficult to make the most out of that healing, of course, but given that this ship has relatively good armor combined with this ability to heal back a ton of HP, means it's best played at mid to close ranges. It can be played at longer ranges, but keep in mind you are lacking a bit of range compared to some other heavier battle cruisers, and I really found that I didn't have a lot of battle impact when I played at longer ranges with this ship. And compared to other tier 10 cruisers, we can see that it's not the most maneuverable ship in the world. That's going to be the major downside here, that you're going to find yourself in positions where you just can't dodge and you're getting overmatched and it hurts. And that's where that healing, again, comes back into play. The speed is decent though, especially with that amazing speed boost. The short cooldown on it makes it incredibly useful. And this can even be useful at the very start of a match. Notice how I pop my speed boost right away. We accelerate incredibly quickly, and I think you know where this is leading. Of course, the Thunderdome. We gotta push it as aggressively as we possibly can. With this ship, we can actually make use of 2 speed boosts in the time that it takes to get to the A cap here. So it runs out now, and we have a 60-second reload. This ship is a lot of fun to play. I really did enjoy my time with it. I didn't have any insane, crazy out there 300, 400k games in it, but what I did have was quite a bit of fun while playing it, especially since people didn't really respect it all that much, and I got quite a few really, really good salvos into people. This Minotaur does get, I think, a little bit lucky, I would say, given how he's playing against this ship, but our speed boost is back up. We're using our Hydro, we're pushing aggressively. And I think this is why the Sevastopol is so much fun. I can take all this damage and I can just heal it back. Something to note about the healing, of course, is it's slow healing. It's a lot though, and it really does take a long time to make use of. So it's important to pop your heal early so that you're getting full value out of the heal and you're not just waiting and taking unnecessary damage. You can see that we just were able to get past that wall of torpedoes from a Shimakaze and that Minotaur, and we're able to push into the A cap. We do have another destroyer to deal with, but this is a great way to get battle impact without a radar. So that's going to be a bit of a pain point here. No radar. But if you're pushing aggressively like this, or you're looking for plays where you can put a ton of pressure on the enemy team, I think you're going to do really good. And it's a lot of fun to make these plays work. This ship also seems to heal back a lot of pen damage, so the heals are very useful very late into the game as well, which is great, since the Salem, for example, that also has a ton of healing at its disposal, tends to saturate, and that heal is less useful as you take more damage. Whereas with this ship, it's not necessarily the fast super heal, but it being a slow super heal seems to mean that you heal back a lot more, which is incredibly nice to have. As we're pushing out here, the weak point I found with this ship is in dealing with DDs. Not only do you not have that radar, but your DPM is incredibly low since you're very much reliant on alpha damage, and since your AP is really the bread and butter of this ship, you're not doing a lot of damage to destroyers. So even though I do think that this ship is very, very good, it really struggles against DDs, and I actually got YOLO'd by DDs twice and died both times. We'll go over those in a little bit when I talk about some of the challenges a little more. But this ship is about these guns as well. It's this heal gimmick combined with these guns and great concealment. Notice the Yoshino broadside, and we're gonna potentially slap him real good. Or not. Or not. This ship does have consistent guns, but there are issues when it comes to this game. Not every salvo is going to land exactly where you aimed it. There are some shells landing short bugs, I think we all know that, and having 6 guns can make that a little bit more frustrating. If you're used to cruiser play, this long reload combined with that inconsistency is also going to make it a little bit more frustrating. But the Yoshino did make a mistake again, and we were able to get a Citadel. Not a lot of damage yet in this game, but we did have a pretty big impact on getting to the A cap. The Yoshino on the border, a little bit of an easier shot, and that time we do manage to get him. I think that the AA is something that I haven't really talked about much in this video yet, and it's just mediocre. I think everybody has experienced the inconsistency and that the AA in this game is really more just about fireworks. The CV is going to get strikes off. It's more important to be able to maneuver to try and dodge them than think you're actually going to shoot the planes down. Notice that we weren't actually able to pin the Immelmann at that angle, so no improved pen angles here. Pretty standard AP, which means that we need to aim up into superstructures or easily overmatchable parts of ships to do damage if people are angled. That's something that you're going to have to learn to do with some of these higher caliber cruisers that don't have the best HE DPM or relying on fires as much. You definitely need to aim up into superstructures of angled battleships, angled heavier cruisers, and you should notice that you're doing much more consistent damage. A pretty good result here. I mainly showed this one for how fun the early pushing game can be. But back to these guns. These guns are really, really quite fun to use. A lot of people don't expect a cruiser with this level of firepower to have this speed and concealment. Pushing up quickly through the middle channel here, we're able to surprise the Salem and get ourselves a nasty dev strike. When these guns hit, boy do they do a lot of damage. But now we're in trouble. Holland is YOLOing into us. I do make a mistake here that I'll talk about, but the weakness here is the secondaries provide very little value when it comes to YOLOing destroyers and low DPM main guns. So yeah, the Holland is going to get all of his torpedoes off at us, and I try to make a play where I slow down and try to dodge them, but I end up eating all of them. I should have gone at full speed turning, and I probably would have been able to dodge it. The reason why I didn't continue bow in, of course, is no torpedoes. No secondaries that I really rely on, so all that Holland has to do is get to my side, and he kills me for free anyway. My only chance of living was to make a turn out play, but that turnout should have been at full speed, not where I tried to slow down. Moving on though, there are weird positions like this that you can sometimes hold in a Sevastopol thanks to this insane amount of healing and really good concealment. So you gotta get creative with this ship. 380mm guns aren't going to be overmatching very many cruisers, certainly not battleships at this tier, But given that this ship is quite accurate and these guns hit hard and have good pen, some of these weird positions that usually wouldn't be sustainable in any other ship can be used by the Sevastopol, and you can get some pretty decent broadsides. Unfortunately here, yeah, we're getting a little tortured by the carrier, but notice how much we're still able to heal. It's going to take us a minute to heal back all that HP, but the heal really is able to deal with a lot of that pen damage, and that's the sustain the Sevastopol has. As we're pushing forward here, I'm not really too concerned about the Ragnar or the Thunderer all that much. I know I can go relatively bow in and deal with that Thunderer. I just want to make sure I don't take a broadside salvo from the Thunderer in the enemy spawn. And I was trying to YOLO around this corner to hopefully take out the enemy Ragnar, and then go try and go broadside with the Thunderer to try and kill him as well. I thought this was going to be a really good play. I assumed I would be able to take the Ragnar out. Yeah. If you notice earlier in this clip, I actually missed about 1 or 2 salvos of secondaries initially on that Ragnar. It's rough. It's really rough playing close range against DDs. It's very, very, very difficult. Now on to the game where I tanked the most damage I possibly could. This, of course, is in arms race, so keep that in mind, that this isn't a typical match for damage received and tanking. But what this ship is really, really good at is going out to these flanks, taking engagements where perhaps I do lose a lot of HP. And this is a Schlieffen pushing us, so we're going to lose some HP to those secondaries, that's for sure. But this ship, notice the healing, right? We're able to heal back basically all the damage we've received so far. That gray bar is the potential healing we have, and there's only a sliver of very dark silhouette on our ship in the bottom left corner there, which is our unhealable damage. It's really, really powerful in these situations where if you go to a flank, you find yourself a little overwhelmed, assuming you're able to angle and kite away, you can definitely get out of these positions. The heal and the speed boost are awesome for this. And of course, the damage control is a great way of dealing with fires. So unlike a lot of the tier 10 cruisers that really suffer because of no fire prevention, the ship is pretty much fine. It has the tools to deal with those fires. Later on in this match, pushing in, yeah, this Minotaur, he overcommitted. Probably wasn't expecting me here since I had been dark for a long period of time, and 11 kilometers of concealment is pretty nasty. Unfortunately, we don't actually end up dev striking him there, but still, 4 guns coming out the front, and we do get ourselves 2 citadels. It's a pretty good result. And this is where I'm going to spend the rest of this game. I'm pushing forward to this island in front of me, and this is where we're going to finish this game off. You'll notice my team is hanging back, and the Sevastopol can hold on to these positions. It's really, really tough to dig out of these really key choke point areas. As long as you have a really solid island and you can reasonably contain where the enemy team is shooting you from and try and angle, you're not really going to run into too many issues staying alive here. I use my speed boost in this case to accelerate. Since I noticed the Shimakaze on my flank, I needed to get out of the way of those torpedoes. A really excellent way to boost the maneuverability of the Sevastopol. That is a weakness. You can use this speed boost even for short durations to make yourself a little bit harder to hit and hopefully survive that little bit longer. Our GK pushes in, dies predictably. Unfortunately, in this game, our Sherman was kind of off chasing the guys on the 9-10 line. You notice the Yoshino in A10. If he had been over here near me, helping me with these DDs, I think we might have been able to actually win this game. But of course, you can't control your teammates, and you can only control the ship that you're in. And as far as my positioning, I'm pretty happy with how this one is turning out so far. We're holding the middle cap from being capped, and we're applying a lot of pressure to the enemy team, forcing them to come around this island, hopefully pushing into crossfires and getting themselves taken out. I don't have the best angles here. The Guden Liu is certainly doing some pretty good damage with those airstrikes, but our heal is coming back. And that's the real difficult point of this ship, is managing that heal. It takes 3 minutes is a long time, guys. 3 minutes is a very, very, very long time. So pushing into these very aggressive positions can could be really, really bad if you're not able to manage your healing. And in this case, I almost didn't manage it correctly, but we do manage to hold on with a sliver of HP. And even though the health isn't coming back completely, yeah, we're gonna be able to live here for quite a bit longer. The Shimakaze smokes up, gets a fire on us right away, and I only have 1 damage control left, so it's up to me whether I should use it or not. And the answer is no. I have a high heal going, it's up for another minute. This fire is only going to last another 30 seconds, so there's no point in using this damage control. If you're lit on even 2 fires, I would say you probably don't need to damage control as long as you have a heal up, as long as assuming you're under pressure as well. If there's no pressure, may as well just damage control it. But it's really important to save these damage controls since you have a finite resource of them. They're really useful, very fast acting and fast cooldown, but it is a finite resource, so you have to pay attention to that and make sure you use it appropriately. As we're pushing out of this position, since AP dive bombers can definitely hurt us, we do get a little bit lucky to not actually end up eating these torpedoes that are appearing. I knew they were coming eventually from these Shimakazes, but we managed to sneak out of here just in time. The carrier hits us a little bit, but not too bad. Since we were maneuvering, it's a little bit harder to hit. Now that our heal is about finished, it's time to think about using our damage control. 2 fires, we're gonna use it. That's our last one. We do have Kuznetsov, though, so there's some potential yet. I was hoping that if I dove struck this Smolensk, I could potentially go dark, hide behind the island some more, that kind of thing. But this game is coming to a close. I'm not quite able to hang on long enough here. The Shimakazes are pushing ahead, and they're probably going to take me out if this carrier doesn't. But how much do you think I tanked this game? We certainly had a lot of potential damage, nearly 3 million potential damage, but how much did I actually receive in damage? As this torpedo, not quite able to get around it. The maneuverability, not quite there, like some other lighter or less armored cruisers would be. So this game, I only did 122,000 damage, but I really tested the survivability out. And even though it is arms race, I understand. I think that a lot of other ships would have died there. This really long duration heal just had this sustaining ability to keep me in this match. So unfortunately we lost, but as we move over to the detailed report, 200,000 damage tanked. Pretty good. Pretty good. As I played this ship more, I of course got better at positioning, and I think this is a really good example of what the Sevastopol is capable of when combining its sustaining healing power with its decent armor and extremely good concealment. I'm okay with just sitting here in front of this Harugumo. There's battleships across the map that can potentially shoot at me, but I'm not too worried. Unfortunately, my DPM is so low that this Harugumo is able to kill our Fletcher while YOLO pushing like this. In a lot of other cruisers, I probably would have been able to help a lot more, but we do manage to do some decent chunking damage. I should probably be swapping over to the HE more, but it's very difficult to do that, even with Expert Loader, since it's a big commitment. It's like 14 seconds, 13 seconds, somewhere in there, considering we have a 25-second reload base. It's not easy to swap over when the HE is pretty anemic against everything other than destroyers. I want the AP against cruisers, I want the AP against battleships. It's tough, because the AP is able to do some pretty amazing things. I don't want to just be swapping back and forth all the time, so I err on the side of just shooting AP all the time, and that does leave me weak against destroyers. But in positions like this, where we're able to hold some pretty good angles against the enemy team, I think that this is where this ship shines. You're wanting to catch those broadsides, and a battleship at 17 kilometers? Sure, we Citadel those. Yeah, the damage is really, really good. The Incomparable, of course, it has a pretty weak Citadel, so that's maybe to be expected. But I think this ship is more than capable of Citadeling most battleships out to that 15-kilometer range. It's very, very scary to fight against. And we saw that the cruisers, well, the cruisers definitely take some huge amount of damage as well. And thanks to our low profile, I think that this ship won't take too much damage in return. That Incomparable is able to overmatch us basically everywhere. And thanks to the smaller height of this ship, it's going to be very, very difficult for him to get some really solid damage into us. And that's one of the other things that the Sevastopol is really just capable of doing. It can just sit out there in front of people and take some shots, and it's not really in much risk of dying. Even though we're taking some huge hits here, there's a Yamato, there is a Sherman. It's a lot of damage coming in at us. Very, very strong ships at tier 10 that are dealing some pretty good damage. I'm not worried though if I'm able to reverse behind this island and make use of this extra healing. You don't want to be getting bursted down, right? I talked about this with the heal a little bit already. It's not a super heal like the Conqueror where you heal back half your HP in an instant. It's half your HP over a longer duration of time. And of course, we can't have a video on a ship with insane guns and insane concealment without highlighting that we can outspot a Hindenburg and also nearly dev strike him 100% to 0. It's one of the incomparable problems, right? The ship has better concealment than a Des Moines does, and the guns are pretty close to Battleship level and are certainly very consistent against cruisers, assuming they're broadside, right? I think that might be a bit of an issue when it comes to fighting the Sevastopol. It might be quite frustrating to deal with a ship that has this kind of gun caliber as well as this kind of concealment. And this ship really doesn't struggle as much as something like the Incomparable when it comes to sustained fire. I think that this thing is much tankier and able to push a little bit more aggressively. And that's a lot of fun for me to play, but dealing with this ship is going to be a bit of a challenge. Fortunately though, no radar, and it seemingly is pretty weak against destroyers as well. So a coordinated attack should be more than enough to deal with this thing. But 170k is a pretty solid game. 5 citadels is always very nice to see. It's a good ship overall. I really do think so. I had some pretty decent matches, and more importantly, I had a lot of fun. It's a fun ship to play. As for the way I think you should build this ship, it's pretty standard over here. You're going to want to run reload. You're going to want to run concealment. I did mess around with Ship Consumables Mod 1. I think you're not going to get much value out of it compared to concealment. Getting that concealment down to 11 kilometers is just amazing. And you already have more than enough healing. Your damage control really isn't suited for duration. You're wanting to get it back up again so you can reuse that ability to clear all the problems with your ship. The engine boost, I think you could probably run the engine boost mod. You might get some more value out of the consumables that way, but realistically, I don't think you want to give up concealment. I've been running Hydro, as you've seen. Defensive fire is just kind of mediocre. Realistically, AA is just a bit of flashy fireworks. I tried running Propulsion mod and Steering Gears mod. Like I mentioned, I don't think you really need to run Damage Control System thanks to these amazing damage controls where you don't really worry about fires terribly much, given the healing and the ability to just clear them whenever you want to. Steering Gears is for someone who wants to flank and wants to have a little better steering maneuverability. Propulsion can be made up for with engine boost. For me personally though, I found myself tending to play a little more stationary in this ship thanks to its ability to outlast its opponents and this amazing heal. I wanted to stay in powerful positions where I was catching broadsides, and being able to move back and forth to dodge just in place a little bit is very useful. Aiming Systems Mod 1, really no question here. You need better accuracy given 6 guns only. It's a little bit rough. I was using Damage Control System Mod 1, but if you do have the coal, engine boost would be interesting on this ship. I went with Main Armaments Mod 1 on the first slot. Really not too much to say there either. The Commander is very, very interesting. You can go a lot of different ways with this thing, but Grease the Gears is pretty much necessary. The guns can feel a little sluggish at times. I am running Gunfeeder because, as much as I hate to admit it, you have to use the HE against DDs. It's very frustrating, but the lack of DPM and lack of ability to deal with DDs really means Gunfeeder is necessary. Probably Priority Target is a better upgrade than Focus Fire Training, but I went with it just a little bit because I found the planes tended to come my way in most games. So I wanted to have a little bit of something to deal with it. I'm running Survivability Expert and Superintendent, trying to get the most out of my healing and being able to just tank. Concealment definitely necessary. Adrenaline Rush is an awesome skill, and I ended up running top grade gunner because I am trying to play more aggressive, and having a little better reload in those scenarios is quite nice to have. So should you be getting the Sevastopol? Well, it is expensive. It's a lot of lines to regrind for the research points, but if you do have the points, I think that this is one of the most interesting ships in the Research Bureau. The Ohio should be your first pickup because it's very good and it's very interesting to play. This ship I don't think has quite the power level of an Ohio relative to its counterparts at tier 10, but it's very, very interesting and unlocks some very unique playstyles, like that Thunderdome A push at the very beginning of a match. Not many ships can do that, and it's really, really fun to have that opportunity. So what this ship is good at, it's guns. They're amazing. They're quite accurate and have really, really good pen. The concealment, you have better concealment than a Des Moines with that kind of gun power. It's awesome. The heal is a ton of fun. The damage controls mean that you don't really worry about fires too often, and the armor, well overmatchable. It's not a very big target to hit, and thanks to all that extra healing of pen damage, you don't really worry about that extra overmatch. The Citadel is quite well protected, and there's not very much superstructure to farm. Thanks to the speed boost, the maneuverability is also really, really solid. On the bad side of things, 6 guns can lead to some inconsistency, as we saw. It only has a 1 second better reload than the Siegfried, which isn't amazing going from tier 9 to tier 10, meaning your DPM is going to suffer against a lot of angled targets. You have to find broadsides. YOLOing destroyers or even killing any destroyers in general is quite tough for this ship as well. So you lack battle impact without people helping you by spotting and dealing with those enemy destroyers. I think on the survivability side, it's also very much a negative thanks to that heal. I know it's fun and I listed it as a positive, but it's very hard to use. And there's times where you're just going to be overwhelmed. Either your heal isn't enough in time, or your heal's on cooldown and you end up dying. So it's very, very difficult to make use of that. The maneuverability on the turning side is very, very poor for a tier 10 cruiser. So you're going to take some more damage. You might eat some more torpedoes you wouldn't normally. Secondaries are pretty useless as well on this ship. On the neutral side of things, the AA is a bit of a fireworks show. That's going to be neutral on basically every ship. Sometimes it works, sometimes it won't. The game is designed to allow the carrier to strike you. You need to be in a position where you can maneuver to try and avoid the strike. That's how CVs versus super ships are designed at the moment. And the Hydro is just a standard Hydro. That's the ship. I think it's a ton of fun. It's very unique, and that's why I'm recommending it. I don't think it's OP, I don't think it's the best ship in the world, but I think it's fun, and that's important in a video game. So if you enjoyed this video and think I deserve it, I'd really appreciate a subscription and a like. Regardless, let me know what you think of the Sevastopol in the comments down below. Are you gonna get it? Let me know. Thank you very much for watching this video, guys. It took a little bit longer to make, but this is the kind of content I wanted to provide when I was becoming a CC. This is what I thought of. Earlier access to ships, allowing for these very detailed ship reviews to come out when the ship is getting announced. So thank you very much for that opportunity, and thank you for watching this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day.